Welcome to another episode of The Construction Leading Edge. My name is Todd DeWalt. I will be your host, and my job here is to help you grow your leadership skills, grow your business, and grow your income. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, this is strictly for construction leaders and business owners. If you're an architect or an engineer, there's no guarantees that we won't find out about you and come after you. But just kidding. For all you AEC professionals, architecture, engineering, construction professionals looking to improve your leadership skills, improve your business skills, this is the place for you. So today's episode is part 2 on conflict resolution. I did a previous episode, I think it was episode number 30, which was about the hidden costs of unresolved conflict in the workplace. Now, if you've been in business very long, whether you've owned a business or you've just been an employee, you've probably faced some unresolved conflict. You've been in a situation where there was an issue between perhaps you and someone, or you saw an issue between other people. And the reality is that unresolved conflict is a big deal in business. It's caused me a lot of problems in the past. It caused me a lot of problems in my own business that I owned, and has caused me issues on projects and in the business that I ran a few years ago. So today I'm going to be talking about the top 10 mistakes to avoid when dealing with conflict at work. Now, I've put together a list of 41 mistakes to avoid when dealing with conflict at work, and I'm going to tell you how you can get your hands on that list of all 41. But in this podcast, I'm going to talk about what I would consider to be the top 10 mistakes to avoid when it comes to dealing with conflict at work. And it's not a matter of if you're going to deal with conflict at work, it's a matter of when and how ugly is it going to be. So let's jump into it. The show notes for this are going to be available at constructionleadingedge.com/033, since this is episode 33. So you can find all of this information, and then, as I said, I'll tell you where you can go to find all 41. Actually, I'll just go ahead and tell you now. If you want to get your hands on the entire list and download a PDF with all 41 of these mistakes, go to constructionleadingedge.com/mistakes. constructionleadingedge.com/mistakes. Put your email address in, and I'll send you all 41 of these mistakes, and you can anxiously look through the list and see which ones you've been making. Trust me, I've made several of these myself. So all right, let's jump into it. Out of the 41 mistakes, I'm going to give you the top 10. We'll start with number 2, and that is not recognizing the cost of unresolved conflict. There's a guy named Daniel Dana who wrote a book, literally, called Conflict Resolution. And he said, quote, "Unresolved interpersonal conflict in the workplace is one of the largest reducible productivity costs, yet it is the least identified." Again, unresolved conflict in the workplace is one of the largest reducible productivity costs, yet it is the least identified. Bottom line, unresolved conflict is a huge cost. The estimates of the cost in the United States alone attributed to unresolved conflict are north of $1 billion. $1 billion. The average employee spends 2.8 hours per week dealing with unresolved conflict. So you can do the math. Take your number of employees times 2.8 hours per week times the average hourly wage, and you'll come up with a staggering number that will get your attention probably. So simply not recognizing the cost of unresolved conflict is a big mistake. Number 3 is avoiding conflict. I found a recent survey that said that 35% of the managers who were interviewed or were surveyed, 35% of managers said they would rather jump out of a plane than to deal with conflict. 27% of those surveyed said they would rather shave their head for a charity than deal with conflict. And this was an interesting one. 8% said they would rather eat bugs than deal with conflict. Now, personally, I don't enjoy conflict. I used to avoid it like the plague, and it caused a lot of problems. I found that when you avoid conflict, it doesn't go away. It usually gets worse, usually grows legs and gets bigger and uglier and starts to grow and get into a lot of other things. So it doesn't go away. So what I've realized is that I don't get to choose if I deal with the conflict. What I get to choose is when I deal with the conflict and how big it is. Number 10 on the list out of 41 mistakes is using anger to fuel conflict. You don't need to respond to issues when you're angry or upset. When you find out about some issue with an employee, say someone is running late constantly, or they make a mistake, or they damage a piece of equipment, whatever the case may be, when you're angry is not the time to respond. A lot of people use anger, a lot of people who avoid conflict and who don't do conflict very well, they use anger to give them the fuel to overcome that fear and deal with confrontation. And that's not healthy. So you don't want to use anger. That's a huge mistake. You don't have to deal with that issue right away. If you realize that you're angry or frustrated, then calm down, come back to it later on. That'll save you a lot of problems. Number 13, this goes along with anger, and this is what I call the avalanche. The avalanche happens when you let issues pile up over time, and then eventually you completely unload on them like an avalanche, wiping out everything in your path. If you don't do this yourself, you've probably seen it, where a manager just blows up on somebody and unleashes a tirade of, you were late last Tuesday and you messed this up and you forgot that, and then I told you to do this and you didn't do it, and that was a mistake, and 6 months ago this happened and I'm pretty sure it was you. And it's not productive. The solution to the avalanche is deal with problems as they pop up and while they're small. Don't unleash the avalanche and wipe out everything in your path. Number 14, this is one of my personal pet peeves. And if there's one thing you take away from this podcast, I hope it's this. So number 14 on the list of the top 41 mistakes is speculating about motives. Speculating about motives, or making assumptions about why someone did what they did. Here's the reality. You can judge facts, you can judge behavior, you can judge the things that you observe, but you can only speculate about why someone did something. You can only guess about why they did it. You are, when let's say someone makes a mistake or someone causes a problem, for some reason it's human nature for us to try to fill in the gaps, to come up with this narrative and say things like, well, you know why they did that, or I'll bet they did that because of some sinister reason. But the reality is you have no idea, and frankly it doesn't matter why they did it. So skip the drama, don't make assumptions about motives, and focus on the observable facts, focus on the behavior. Because you know what happens when you assume, right? I've gone through that several times, and I can't think of a single time that I was right when I speculated about somebody's motives. Typically, it's not as sinister as you think it might be. Now, here's a couple of tips, a couple of mistakes when it comes to resolving conflict between two people on your team. This is when two people that you're managing or two people you work with have a conflict. Here are a couple of common mistakes that people make when it comes to trying to resolve those conflicts. Number 23, that is being the go-between. Number 23, being the go-between. This is when a manager, or maybe it's just a peer, feels like it's their job to go talk to, let's say there's an issue between Kathy and Nancy in the office. And let's say Kathy and Nancy both report to you. If you're the go-between mistake is when you go to talk to Kathy and Kathy unloads all of her issues about Nancy to you, and then you go talk to Nancy and Nancy unloads all her issues about Kathy to you, and then you go back and you tell Kathy what Nancy said, and you go back to Nancy and tell her what Kathy said, and you try to mediate this solution without ever getting those people who have the conflict in the same room. That is exhausting. And the reason we do that is because we want to avoid that confrontation. We just want people to get along, right? But you're going to have to get those people in the room. So don't be the go-between. Ultimately, you want your people to solve their own issues among themselves, and you want them to take ownership of the solution, because you don't want, if you start doing that, do you want to be the go-between for every issue that pops up in your company or on your team? I don't think so. Number 24, if there's a conflict between two people, one of the common mistakes is to tell them, quote, well, just avoid them. Just stay away from them, end quote. Some managers think that this is a viable solution for solving issues between people on their team, and just say, just stay away from each other. Just pretend it never happened. Yeah, you may not get along. Don't resolve it. Just stay away from each other. I've seen this. It doesn't solve anything. It allows the problems to smolder, and generally they get worse. And when you have those two people or more who have an unresolved conflict and they're still around each other, a lot of times what happens is they start to rally and build a team. They want to get people on their side because everybody wants to be right. So you need to get those issues out on the table, get them solved. Don't just tell people to stay away from each other. It doesn't work. Number 29 is what I call ready, fire, aim. Ready, fire, aim. This happens when you learn about an issue and then you start firing off solutions before you really have enough information to take action. So unless it's an emergency or a life safety issue, chances are you probably have some time to consider it first. I've made the mistake before of an employee coming to me with an issue, telling me about some action or some injustice that somebody else has done to them. And I've made the mistake of just going off one side of the information, just one side of the story. And I found the hard way that there's always at least two sides to a story, and then there's the truth. So the truth is generally some combination of all the different sides. And I've learned the hard way that it's best to look at it from at least two different sides, maybe three or four, before getting involved and starting to pull the trigger and make stuff happen. So don't be guilty of ready, fire, aim. Number 38 on the list is just simply no training. In the construction industry, we train on safety. We train our people on how to use our software and how to use apps. We train people on using equipment, driving vehicles, defensive driving. We train our people on so many things, but very few companies are providing training when it comes to conflict resolution. I found an interesting article, I think it was in Engineering News Record, that the average job site argument costs $11,000. $11,000 is what it cost a company for the average job site argument. Now, obviously, conflict resolution is not on par with safety, but it's a big part of the business. Let's face it, in construction, we're dealing with conflict. We're in constantly changing situations with lots of different subcontractors on job sites with competing interests. It is prime ground for conflict. It's going to happen. So there's just no training. And what that does when there's no training, that just leaves it up to each individual person and their individual personality as to how to deal with that conflict. So people who don't do conflict very well, just avoid it. There are people who love conflict and they handle it in their own way. And then there's the passive aggressives. And there are the folks who do the avalanche. There are people who get angry, the people who take it personally. So if you're not providing training, your company's not going to have a consistent approach to dealing with conflict. And this is one of the areas that I'm convinced a lot of construction companies could benefit from. There's a lot of unnecessary costs because of unresolved conflict. That's why I'm doing these podcasts. That's why I'm putting these resources together, because I'm convinced, based on not only the research I've done and my experience, but there are PhDs writing papers on the cost of interpersonal conflict in the workplace. It's a big deal. We need to train our people. And then number 39, this is the last one that we'll talk about out of the 41. The number 39 is simply not having a plan. And this comes down to the individual level. When we're caught off guard, we're more likely to fall back into the old, ineffective, bad habits dealing with conflict resolution, like just avoiding it altogether, or being angry, or whatever the case may be. So if we don't have a plan, if we're not trained and we're not equipped, we don't have the tools to deal with it, then we're just going to default back to how we've always done it, which is not always a good thing. So the key to effective confrontation or conflict resolution is really to have a solid plan for how the conversation needs to go, for having a plan on how to analyze the situation, and preparing for the conversation, coming up with a solid plan, understanding the desired outcome of the conversation, and then having a process to follow during that, what I'll call tough conversation, to get that conflict resolved. So just not having a plan is it's just a mistake. I mean, there's so many other things that we don't leave to chance, that we don't just shoot from the hip on, and dealing with conflict with employees or subcontractors and vendors falls in that bucket as well. You've got to have a plan. You need to be prepared. Don't just shoot from the hip when you have to deal with an issue on your job site, in your company, in your office. You need to have a solid plan, because having a plan, I've found, takes a lot of the emotion out of it. Knowing you're well prepared to have that tough conversation takes a lot of the stress, a lot of the anxiety out of it. Having a framework to follow makes it more black and white, and takes a lot of the anxiety out of it. So you need to have a plan. So those are the top 10 mistakes out of the list of 41 mistakes to avoid when it comes to dealing with conflict at work. Let me recap. Out of that list, we talked about number 2, which is simply not recognizing the cost of unresolved conflict. Number 3 is avoiding it, burying your head in the sand. Number 10 on the list was using anger to fuel confrontation. Number 13 is the avalanche, unloading on people. Number 14 is speculating about motives. Number 23 and 24 were mistakes when it comes to dealing with conflict between two other people, and those are being the go-between and telling people just to avoid the other person. Number 29 on the list was ready, fire, aim, not having all the information you need to really make a good quality decision. Number 38 was a lack of training, and 39 was a lack of a plan. I want to throw one more in here, and that is a very common mistake when it comes to dealing with conflict, is simply losing sight of the goal. See, when there's no training, when there's no plan, and there's no system in place for conflict resolution, it's really easy for your emotions to just take you out of the game. It makes you lose sight of the goal. I mean, ultimately, the end game here with conflict resolution, with confronting people, is to make the other person successful, to help them win, so your organization wins. That's the ultimate goal. The goal, if you go into confrontation or dealing with conflict without a clear understanding of that goal, then you're not going to end up in the right spot. So don't lose sight of the goal when it comes to dealing with conflict in the workplace. That is the top 10 list out of the 41 mistakes to avoid when it comes to dealing with conflict at work. If you want all 41 in a PDF download, I will email that to you. All you need to do is go to www.constructionleadingedge.com/mistakes. Put in your email address, and you will have that in just a few seconds. A couple other things I wanted to talk to you about. One, do you ever find yourself doing, or as part of your job, to do job site inspections or punch lists? Maybe it's weekly job site reports. And if you're doing that, or if you're trying to integrate pictures into those reports, if you're like me, I've done a lot of these reports, and you walk the job site, you take the picture with your phone, or God forbid, a digital camera, and then you go back to the office, you upload the photos to your computer, you go find the pictures on your computer, you insert them into a Word document, then you have to format those pictures. It is an absolute pain, very time consuming. I used to hate doing weekly job site reports, but I found a great app for just that, for doing job site reports. It allows me to walk a job site using my iPhone. I can take pictures. Then when I go back to my office or get anywhere in a wireless network, I click a button and my reports are formatted, ready to go. Literally with a click of a button, I can send them to a preset list of recipients: owner, architect, engineer, etc., contractor. And literally I can walk a job site, I can take pictures, get back to my office, click a button, and reports are done. They're formatted, the pictures are all the same size. I can put captions in there, I can make it beautiful. It is the best thing I've found for doing routine job site inspection reports. It's also great for pre-construction photos, for punch lists, for weekly reports. One thing I would encourage you to do if you're not doing this is you need to be doing routine inspections of your job site. Before slabs are poured, before drywall goes up, just walk around, take pictures. The beauty of this app is that all your reports and all your pictures will be in one spot on a website that you can go access at any point. You don't have to go dig through an FTP site. And I would strongly encourage you to check it out if you do reports, or if you're not doing reports, I think you need to be doing them. So the name of this app is ArchiSnapper. Actually, it's designed for architects, but I went over into architect land and I found an app that was good for them, and I brought it back and I figured out how to make it work for us. And really, it didn't take much. I just figured out this is the best app that I've found out there for doing just that. If you just want to stop having to screw around with formatting pictures in Word, you need to check out ArchiSnapper. If you want to sign up for a free trial and learn more about it, go to www.constructionleadingedge.com/snap, SNAP, constructionleadingedge/snap. Check it out, sign up for the free trial. It has saved me several hours a week, and it's pretty cheap too, pretty cheap. Next, the other thing I wanted to tell you about is if you're looking for a solution for tracking timesheets. So if you're still passing around paper timesheets, if you're collecting time with text messages or email or Excel spreadsheets and doing a lot of duplicate data entry, if your company has problems with paychecks being wrong or people getting paid the wrong rate based on the job site they're working on, you need to check out this app that I've used. It's called T-Sheets. Go to constructionleadingedge.com/T-Sheets. T-Sheets. TSHEETS. It is mobile friendly, GPS enabled. It has powerful reporting. It allows you real-time insight. If your people are using T-Sheets, you can see how many hours somebody has, where they're working, what job code they're punched into, how many hours they've worked on each job code in real time. And it's GPS enabled, so you can see where they are as well. And it integrates with just about every payroll service out there. I use this for a company that I grew from 20 to 50 people, and it paid for itself almost immediately. It actually had about a 10x ROI. It cost a few $100s a month, and it saved a few $1,000s a month. And one of the best things about it is it's pay as you go. No license, no software cost you have to buy, no implementation. It is relatively pain-free. The people are great. The customer service is amazing. They work with a lot of construction companies. So go to constructionleadingedge.com/T-sheets. They also have a free trial you can check out as well. And I'm telling you, if you're using paper to track timesheets, this is one of the best things you could ever do. Lastly, if you want to download all 41 of these mistakes to avoid when dealing with conflict, again, go to constructionleadingedge.com/mistakes. I'll put in your email address there, and I will send you that report across the internet in a matter of seconds. And then you can download that bad boy, go through it, and if you are, hopefully you're not too self-conscious, but you'll probably find at least a handful of the mistakes that you've made. I certainly found some on that list that I've made. One last thing, if you like the podcast, hey, let me know. I love to get emails from you folks. I get periodic emails from folks who like the podcast. They say how much it helps them, how it's been instrumental in growing their business. I would love to hear from you. It helps me out tremendously to hear from you and find out how it's really helping you. And then just to let you know, well, first of all, let me know. You can hit me on Twitter at ConLeadEdge, or just send me an old-fashioned email, todd@constructionleadingedge.com. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. And I will let you know, I've got some interesting interviews in the schedule. I'm going to be interviewing several presidents and CEOs of large construction companies all over the country. I'm going to focus and try to interview some of these folks to find out how they've done what they've done, how they've grown their business, how they think about leadership, how they think about the business side of running a construction company. Really looking forward to that. So should be good stuff. So if you know, or if you are an interesting CEO or president of a construction company, send me an email. I would like to talk to you. I may want to interview you as well. I would appreciate any referrals on interesting senior leaders of construction companies who you think would make for a good interview on the podcast. So sent a lot of stuff your way today. Go check out those 41 mistakes at constructionleadingedge.com/mistakes. Go check out T-sheets, constructionleadingedge.com/T-sheets. And if you're looking for a job site inspection report, go to constructionleadingedge.com/snap. The last link in a long string of links I'm going to tell you is if you want the show notes to find out all the stuff that I've sent you, if you have already forgotten about all the links, the one link you need to remember to find all the other links is constructionleadingedge.com/033, and you'll save yourself a whole lot of remembering. That puts this episode in the can. My name is Todd DeWalt. I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email. Tell me what you're thinking. Todd@constructionleadingedge, and I will see you next time. Thanks, guys.